Here.
Lee Doobie.
Here.
Kimberly Farah.
Here.
Sheila Rose.
Here.
Sarah Knopfman.
Here.
Sean O'Neill.
Here.
Caitlin Cornell.
Here.
Kristen Savage.
Present.
Susan Sherman.
Here.
Jessica Silva.
Here.
James Sweeney.
Here.
Karen Yusenta.
Here.
Also seated this evening, Superintendent of Schools, Dr. El Metzger, Assistant Superintendent, Dr. Roxanne Wilson, and CFO Business Administrator, Attorney Zacharias.
Sue, would you lead us in the pledge?
Happy to. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First, I'd like to welcome, we have 2 new members, so I'd like to welcome our new members to the board. As a result of the resignation of one of our members, we do have an opening for the vice chair position of the SAU. So at this time, I will entertain nominations for vice chair. Mrs. Sherman.
I'd like to nominate for vice chair from the Timberlane Board, Kim Farah.
Okay, there's a nomination of Kim Farah for the position of vice chair. Are there any additional nominations? This is for the position of vice chair of the SAU. The chair sees no other nominations for the position of vice chair of the SAU, so I'm going to go to a vote. Nomination of Dr. Farah for vice chair.
Mr. Cipriano.
Mr. O'Neill.
I'd actually like to extend that vote, and I'd like to actually make an amendment to that motion. I have seen a lot of stuff that's taking place with your leadership at the school board for the SAU. I actually have lost confidence in you as our leader, and I'd actually like to actually amend this motion such that Dr. Farah becomes the chair.
Appreciate that, Mr. O'Neill. I appreciate your opinion. However, under the rules of order, there is no motion to remove the chair, so your motion is out of order.
You serve at the pleasure of this board.
Yes, sir. There is no motion under the
making
rules
that
of order,
motion.
and I'm ruling that out of order. We have a motion on the floor for Dr. Farah for the position of vice chair. Seeing no other nominations on the floor, the chair will move to a vote. All those in favor of Dr. Farah for the position of vice chair, please signify by raising your hand. Okay. All those opposed? Okay, and then abstentions? Two abstain, yes, her hand was up. Yep. Okay, so we have minutes for approval. We have the May 9th public and non-public minutes. The non-public minutes were sealed, so we'll bring those forward during a non-public session. So right now, it's just the public session minutes. Give everybody a minute to take a look. So the chair will entertain a motion to approve the public minutes from May 9th, 2017.
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Yusenka. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Ms. Sherman? A couple people did. Any changes, concerns? Okay. All those in favor? All those opposed? And abstentions? Okay. Next up, we have federal funding authorization. So each year, the board must approve the superintendent, assistant superintendent, and business administrator to apply for and receive on behalf of the SAU federal and state grants and funding. The chair will entertain a motion to authorize the superintendent, assistant superintendent, and business administrator to apply for and receive on behalf of the district federal and state grants and funding, and to file such authorization with the New Hampshire Department of Education.
So moved.
Motion's been made.
Second.
Motion's been seconded. Is there any discussion? The chair sees no discussion. All those in favor? to be unanimous, I think. Okay, thank you. Next, we have the preliminary budget process. I'll turn it over now to Mr. Dowd and Dr. Metzler to present the preliminary 2019-2020 budget and associated documents.
Thank you, Chairman Cipriano. So in front of you, you have a copy of the initial proposed budget for SAU55 for fiscal year 2019-2020. And you'll see at the end of the day, total expenses up about 3.75% and a total expenditure increase of about 3.38% overall. A couple assumptions that are in the budget, you'll go through some of the highlighted areas. We have technology services up, 125 budgeted last year, 157,932 is currently situated. That relates to the implementation of a new timekeeping system that is SAU function and associated costs for support and best estimates for the year upcoming, as well as some increases for our Infinite Visions system from last year, which weren't captured in the budget. We also have pretty steady and stable budget. Aside from that, an assumption on employee insurance is only 5%. I don't have any GMR figures, so I'll caveat this budget with, or this presentation with that. Took a reasonable estimate, and that's where we ended up on that. So aside from that, things are relatively flat, stable. Those are really the highlighted areas. You'll note that contracted services, which is 2390,452 on your sheet, is down a bit, and that's a reflection of moving some of the costs that we had previously attributed to technology up to the technology services line. So overall, the 157 in technology is higher than the 125 previously budgeted, but some of that is a reclassification from contracted services, which has gone down.
For those members that are new or otherwise not familiar with this budgeting process at the SAU, I just want to make you aware, this is the first of multiple meetings in which you'll have the opportunity to see, discuss, and take action potentially later on the budget. So we've got this, we'll have a budget work session, and then there'll be a public hearing on the budget as well. So there'll be multiple opportunities. But particularly as you familiarize yourself with the budget, this is an opportunity to ask questions and clarify if you're not sure what's in different lines. If you if you have questions for Mr. Dowd, Dr. Metzler.
What you don't see in that in front of you is that does not reflect any recommendations made by the consultant that was hired by Timberlane as far as the business office. There's still an open position that you approved last year. You kept that position open. So you have some flexibility moving forward, and I would imagine that will be discussed in great detail probably at your next meeting when you're talking about the budget. But that's not, we didn't put another position in there or any additional funds into that line.
Okay.
So that's not there. Okay.
Dr. Farrar.
So is the superintendent saying that we're going to discuss the recommendations that the consultant that Timberlane paid for at the SAU meeting?
Well, this is, can I answer?
Yes,
This
go ahead.
this is where it's tricky because it's a Timberlane initiative, but it's an SAU function. So I did discuss this with Timberlane to some degree about the fact that we have a Timberlane position and an SAU position both open, right? So,
Yep.
meaning there could be some services that both districts could get from the position that would be an SAU position, but there's a Timberlane-specific position that's also open that we left open to allow you some flexibility. And I struggle, like Dr. Farrell, where is the right place? Is that a Timberlane discussion and a Timberlane action, or is that an SAU action, or is it a kind of a mutual agreement of both boards, which would make more sense here? I don't know the answer to that.
So historically, what we have done is insofar as an action would impact the SAU, like for instance, if there was a staffing change, the SAU, then we would discuss it at the SAU. If it's entirely contained within the district and the district budget, then that's under the purview of the respective district boards. And as we've discussed, this board has no authority to tell the Timberlane District Board, what to do. So that would be for that side. At the same time, to Dr. Metzler's other point, we have had occasion in the past on previous budget sessions where we have discussed opportunities that are mutually beneficial to the boards, where it makes sense to jointly bid out work or it makes sense to jointly share some expenses. And we've also, going back a couple of years, we also there were expenses that were reclassified because they sat at the district level, but they were really a shared expense among both districts, and so those were moved into the SAU budget because it was more appropriate that way, and that way a single district wasn't incurring an expense that was jointly shared. Dr. Metzler, and then I'll get to you, Dr. Farah.
Sorry, if I could, just for, so everybody understands, more for the public, at the SAU, we have some Timberlane-only employees in the SAU, and then we have SAU employees. And so these are two separate positions. One's open, it's an SAU position, which would be 77% Timberlane, 23% Hampstead. The other one is 100% Timberlane. So if Timberlane decided to do something that would be only Timberlane specific, that would be a function that would just serve Timberlane. There's just some flexibility there if there's some creative way to assist the business office with those positions. You have that opportunity or not.
Yeah, so I think ultimately it's up to the Timberlane board. If you want to, if there may be an opportunity, you can bring it. Otherwise, it's for you to decide. Sorry, Dr. Farah, you had your hand up earlier.
Yes, that's my point exactly. We paid for the consultant, so I don't think that information should be brought to this board unless Timberlane's board has a discussion prior to bringing it to this board.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. Mr. O'Neill?
The accounting services that are being provided by the SAU, this is where this is all relative to our audit for the SAU, same as Timberlane's audit. They both had the same comments from the auditor. I believe that the school board for Timberlane tried to incorporate this as an SAU matter, but we were told that we would not get a meeting and it wouldn't happen. So we were forced to, with very little time, to make a decision to do a corrective action plan to get some services in here such that Mr. Dowd could balance the books so that we could be prepared for the upcoming audit that's probably already started already. So I'd like to actually continue this discussion talking about that because it's very important. There was a deficiency in the SAU providing that services to everybody, so that the expenses that were incurred should be exposed by the SAU, not Timberlane and solely.
Okay. Okay. So I'm not, obviously I wasn't at your Timberlane meeting, so I'm not.
We would have liked to have this kind of a meeting, but it wasn't going to happen. We were
Okay.
told.
So the consultant is consulting on SAU accounting matters? Okay.
Well,
Sorry, I'm just trying to understand.
Because it is an SAU function to do the accounting for our boards.
Right.
So that consultant is being paid by Timberlane money for an SAU function. And that, to be honest, I wasn't at the meeting where this board approved it. It should not have been approved.
Okay.
And our board, I feel, needs to have it discussed at the SAU board because it's an SAU function, and there are deficiencies within the SAU audit also that parallel those of the Timberlane audit.
Okay.
So it's a consistent theme.
Okay. Fair enough. Mr. Boyle.
I don't remember the exact amount because basically it was, we as a board approved up to 20,000.
Okay.
And as far as I know that we're not even going to spend the 20,000. But I think to Dr. Farah's point, it's kind of like it's a gray area because it's an SAU function. Even though there are Timberlane books, there are Hampstead books, there are SAU books. I think it gets to be a gray area in some of on any given day, any hour of the day. You know, in the business office, you know, they don't like say, okay, for these 2 hours I'm going to work at Timberlane, then for 15 minutes I'm working at SAU. So I think a lot of this stuff gets rolled in, and our accountant had, as they mentioned, issues with all three of them. Probably the largest issues they had were the Timberlane books, because we are by far the largest of the, you know, when you compare Hampstead, the SAU budget is only a couple $1 million. Mm-hmm. So I think that, well, I don't want to put words in Dr. Farah's mouth, but I think what she was looking for is I believe the percentage is it 77 and 23%? Does that sound right?
It's about that ballpark, yeah.
Yeah, so I think you might be talking about a portion of the, if the bill, well, if, the simple math, if there was $10,000, you'd be looking at $2,300.
Right.
So the good news here is we're not talking about $200,000. So, and I think the better news is that, as far as I know, everything is, whatever the issue was, has been cleaned up, resolved, and we're hoping to get at some point in a future board meeting, to get this gentleman to come in and tell us what he did and give us recommendations going forward, which gets into the superintendent's point where you might be looking to increase a staff member in the business office, in the accounting function, bookkeeping function, something along those lines. So, any rate, so that's, I'm trying to make some attempt to clarify what happened here, because it really, you didn't see what happened, if you will. Yeah, it's whatever.
Okay. Well,
What did happen?
yep.
From
Kathleen.
what I'm understanding, this is all still something that's in progress. You don't have any recommendations from a consultant. No decisions have been made, so it sounds like it's a premature conversation to have at an SAU meeting. I mean, nonetheless, I appreciate the heads up. In the past, the Timberlane board has voted whether or not to bring an issue to the SAU board, and I believe the Hampstead board has discussed it at our own meetings as well before we would bring it to the Timberlane board. So without those processes being followed and without any clear resolve from a consultant or recommendations from a consultant, I really don't see any decisions to be made at this point in time.
Yeah, look, I'm of the same mind, especially since we're just being made aware of this right now. So, but I'm open to revisiting it, potentially down the road. When is the, if I might, when is the report or whatever, the deliverable, when is that expected to be completed? Oh, yeah, Dr. Metzler.
We hope to have that soon, right, some point in October. And I think there's a point that, the common theme, to Mr. O'Neill's point, is that we keep hearing from the consultant or from our auditors that is we're understaffed in the business office.
Yeah.
And then people are quick to say, well, you used to have an assistant. But I have to be honest with you, our issues were in facilities and food service, and we don't have issues with those. That's been taken care of. So again, we were understaffed, so it's almost like robbing Peter to pay Paul. So yeah, we have somebody taking care of that, and now we're hearing we're understaffed. For districts our size, we're significantly understaffed in terms of our business office.
Right.
So, if it's, again, we have an opportunity to help both districts, so if Hampstead's going to participate, or in that, or if it's just somewhat Timberlane specific, the scope of the audit in Timberlane was widened. There was more work on that particular audit. Questions generate more work, and more work, and more work. So that was the lion's share of the work, but, I'm not disagreeing, it's an SAU function. Both districts benefit, as does the SAU, so, we're all in this together,
Yep.
as far as that goes. So, we have some flexibility, again, we have those open positions, it's just a matter of how you want us to use them, that's why they were left open. And that's what I shared all the way back in June with Timberlane, that was the plan. And the
Okay.
plan was to hear from that consultant to tell us what he thought we needed in order to, become more efficient in our business office. I do
Yeah.
believe people are more comfortable on the Timberlane side of things with the bidding process and how vendors are hired and how projects are seen through and all those sorts of things. That's getting taken care of in a really solid way. But our business office needs some help, like a bookkeeper, I think, that Mr. Boyle had indicated. So.
Fair enough. Yeah, so I think I'm open to revisiting this at a future meeting, and you may have more insight in terms of the cost and the numbers, and that we'd have the breakdown. So I appreciate the input, and we're open to revisiting it. Mrs. Sherman.
So let me see if I can clarify for my own self. We have an open position, SAU, that we approved in the SAU budget that has
Correct, and
not
that's,
been hired.
and that's, and
Open.
correct me if I'm wrong with the number, I believe that's 35,000 on that
Right.
line. And we have an open position in Timberlane, which I believe that was in the, is that in the same?
40?
40
ballpark?
range, yeah, about 40.
About 40,000
40,000,
ballpark, because we had a retirement that we didn't
Right.
replace that person.
right.
Primarily because I knew you were going to need some flexibility based on recommendations that were going to come forward from the consultant.
Yeah, so I think the consultant's recommendations should, hopefully will sync up with our budget work session, and we'll be able to look at staffing levels if we want to. That's the opportunity to take into account, where we are in terms of benchmarks, in terms of recommendations.
It's not real complicated. Timberlane's 100% of one of the positions and 77% of the other position.
Right.
That's the Timberlane share, and Hampstead only has 23% of the lower salary in the SAU budget.
Okay. Yep, Mrs. Sherman?
So, would you be open, Mr. Chairman, to the Timberlane Board having an agenda item either on the 17th or the 14th of November, which are our future dates? If in fact we get some of this information, let you know what's happened at the Timberlane end, and see if, in fact, we need some SAU money to help
Yeah,
us.
yeah, absolutely.
Help us with
I'll
a
give-
person that could help both school systems and
Yeah, and I think
SAU.
it's relevant to the SAU insofar as there are recommendations, as Mr. O'Neill said, that there may be, because we haven't seen the report, but there may be recommendations that are applicable to the SAU and processes here, so I think, yeah,
I
that's
mean,
appropriate.
the obvious one is that we're understaffed. I mean,
So-
Jeff said an accounting department of one.
Right.
You know, I mean,
Yeah, so,
well, he's got
And
some
the-
people.
The assistance is primarily, we need it with Timberlane.
okay.
You know, Hampstead's, I mean, I know that there are common
smaller.
themes throughout them, but
So, again, we'll adjust this at a future meeting. We should have potentially have more information at that point, a report, and we can have that discussion. Mr. O'Neill?
in regards to the manpower, I still don't understand on how you can have somebody in an SAU umbrella that's providing services to these two entities, that you're having employees that are just for Timberlane over here. It should be everybody that's doing an accounting for this service and as an SAU employee and is dispersed the cost according to what the ratios are that we disperse costs at.
yeah, I don't necessarily disagree with your statement. I'm just, you know, when I first started working here, I was like, oh, that's a
No,
Timberlane
and
employee, that's a
I would
Hampstead.
understand that. You would get, you inherited this.
Yeah,
It just
and
never
so-
made sense to me that it's done this way. The SAU provides these services to both respective boards. The cost is, we know what it is, so when we needed extra services, because this is what it's implying, is that some of this additional cost is due to us and our stuff, but we pay 77% of the cost, so we're already paying that premium in the disbursement of that cost.
Yeah. And in fairness, going the other way, you know, for instance, there are particular things that Timberlane has that Hampstead does not have, and, you know, they'll ask, it could be ESOL, or it could be a homeless person that we use in Timberlane that Hampstead needs help with, and I'm like, whoa, Hampstead, that's not a Hampstead employee, they can't be doing work in Hampstead. So it's not an SAU employee, it's a Timberlane employee that's housed here, but Hampstead has a need. And to your point, everybody in the SAU should be able to help both districts when needed.
Correct.
And that's not the case, right? When it's 100% funded by Timberlane, they're not doing work for Hampstead, right?
I would agree.
So they're not an SAU employee?
Yeah, no, it's a Timberlane employee. We have Timberlane people housed here. So there are some people that are Timberlane employees, and then some people are SAU employees. Like, for instance, like Christy Michaud, she's 100% curriculum in Timberlane. She doesn't have any,
In the business office?
but she's, in the business office, he could talk about how that's divided up. but,
Yeah, but everyone's an SAU employee,
Yeah.
so,
Everyone is an SAU employee?
in the business
the
office.
business
The business
office.
function, that's correct, yeah.
So we don't have anybody strictly for Timberlane?
No.
Not just in his office.
Okay.
Just confuse you more? I mean, when I came here, it was like that particular person does the Hampstead work,
Yeah,
you know?
That was the way it was.
It used to be that way where people, like, when Cindy Hendy was here,
Yep.
she was
Yep.
just the person
Just
that,
Hampstead.
so we've made some changes where we can. We're getting closer to what you're talking about, Mr. O'Neill, but I think there still are some people that are district-specific in this building. Sorry, Kim.
Okay. Dr. Farrar?
So, all the employees that work in the business office are SAU employees, correct?
Correct.
Right? Why are we then having a Timberlane consultant talking about adding, say, a Timberlane employee instead of an SAU employee? We don't want to add Timberlane employee to the business function. We want to move towards all SAU employees.
Yeah, I don't think, I'm sorry if I misled you there. I don't believe that that's the consultant's recommendation. For me, it was, I know I have 100%, a position that's 100% Timberlane, and then I have a position that's
But there should
77%.
not be a 100% Timberlane position moving into the business office. They should all be SAU employees.
They
We're
could
trying to
be.
move
If you combine those two positions, and I think I said, when you start doing the math, you're talking 9 out of 10 days would be Timberlane. One of the, 10% of the time would be Hampstead. If you took 50%, if you took 100% salary, that's Timberlane, and a SAU employee, because there's two salaries. If you're looking for a bookkeeper or somebody, that they're not a $35,000 employee. You're talking
Right.
probably an $80,000 or more, right? I mean,
Okay. Mrs. Abbruzzese?
So I'm wondering, and am pretty sure that the rest of my board is wondering, what is the Timberlane position that is open currently?
It was, do you remember the person, Kim Kissel retired? So the Timberlane, that was a
background, yeah.
receptionist position. So
Okay.
she was a person that greeted people at the front door, answered
So it
phones.
was just a
did some-
receptionist position that they have open right now, it's not that they lost an accounting position?
No, it would be a position change and a
Yeah,
job
okay.
description. That's why I would take the board action
So-
to talk about.
I'm just gonna reiterate, I think this whole conversation is premature, although I appreciate the heads up, I don't think that there's any decision to be made.
So I agree. I think this is it's a discussion worth having, continuing, particularly once the recommendations are made. So I'll look to put it on a future agenda.
Oh, all right, so in the other employee benefits, that's the unfunded liabilities for the SAU, correct? This one has been historically underfunded, and you haven't changed it from last year. So I'm wondering why. I thought we were trying to do incremental increases so that we do not have unfunded liabilities should anybody lose their retirement.
We have a buildup of our fund balance as well to offset that. So to the extent that we haven't used or didn't use a portion of that, it built up the fund balance as well.
So we're not, you feel that the $115,069 is sufficient at this point in time?
I think it's an estimate, a reasonable estimate, and the numbers didn't come out much different than that. Do I think that it's sufficient? I'd like to cover the whole thing. I'm conscious of our taxpayers and the people who contribute, so
What would be the whole thing?
well, I can have that number for you.
Yeah, can you get that answer,
can,
please?
yeah,
Because
yeah.
I think that's been the missing quotient.
Sorry, and I'm going to get to you in one second, Ms. Silva. But when you say the whole thing, are we talking like the worst-case scenario that everybody who's
Right,
eligible
yeah, 100%.
all decides to retire
Yeah,
at once?
'cause they do
Or
about
not at
80%.
once, but-
I don't believe we've ever gotten that figure.
Okay, I just want to clarify what you're asking for, and that way we get the information back that we think we're going to get back.
Yeah.
I know when we first started budgeting for it, we budgeted it at about 50%. I don't know if that's still accurate. That probably would not cover two people leaving with their post-employment benefits.
Right.
To about 80%.
But we do have post-employment benefits that are in the financials that are more of a governmental-wide type situation, which you'll see in the financials as they are. So that's why I was trying to figure out, when I look at the other employee benefits, we do have some costs in there, and we're trying to build it up slowly, and that's what we're doing, and to try and get our balance sheet a little bit stronger to cover those. But you don't see on here other post-employment benefits. That's more of a governmental-wide consolidated accounting feature.
For those, and I'm going to get to Ms. Silva next, but for those of you that are maybe new to this, and this is your first introduction to this, the genesis of this is that, and I actually don't remember how long ago it was now, it was a couple of years ago, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, our auditors flagged this particular line item as being an unfunded liability. What this line item is we have employees in our SAU who are eligible to retire, and they get certain benefits when they retire. There may be a buyout, and they may sell back some accrued vacation and so forth, and we have to pay that out. And we weren't funding that, and what was happening is we would have an employee retire, and we'd have to come up with the money somewhere. The auditor identified that as an unfunded liability, and so we tasked the business office to come up with a reasonable estimate. Again, on one end of the spectrum, like Mrs. Abrazizi was talking about, there's what's the total liability, which is if everybody who's eligible to retire all decided to retire at once. We've never funded to that level, but I think it's a valid question just so we have some perspective of what the total liability could be. But in turn, we've just based on what we think is a reasonable estimate in terms of employees that are likely to retire. Knowing full well that we're not allowed to, we can't tell an employee they can't retire because we didn't fund the line or things like that. So, Ms. Silva, I'm going to get to you now.
That line, I'm a little confused, so that line, other employee benefits line, is that what line you're
Yes.
talking about?
That's the one.
That's correct.
So, when we say it's historically been underfunded,
There was at one point it wasn't funded at all.
and so when I look at the actuals for 2017-18, it's much less than what we're budgeting. So how is it underfunded?
I was talking about when the auditor originally flagged it, which was, I think, probably about 3 years ago now.
Yeah, they had nothing there.
And I
We
think
had
they're
nothing there, and then we were going negative, and we'd have to find the money elsewhere.
in the budget. And I think he even recommended it, try to do it at about 80% of what you're estimating you think would happen.
That's correct. That's correct. But we felt like that was We weren't
What-
ready to go
What kinds
there.
of things, so if somebody leaves, what,
Yeah, I'll let
what are we
I'll let
talking
Mr.
about
Dowd.
as far as walking out
He'll do
with?
it more justice than I can,
and
so.
where does that come from?
We may have a payout of accrued time. We may have a payout of.
How much time can people accrue?
Every
Vacation
contract's
time?
different.
Yeah, it would vary by the contract. Maybe some additional time that needs to be paid out, maybe sick time, vacation time. It's a mixture of all of that.
Are
would need
those
to be paid out.
capped in the contracts?
Depends on the,
Yeah, it depends
You
on
have the
the,
contracts in your packet, some,
Yeah,
yeah,
actually, I
they're
think they
capped
all
at
are.
different amounts.
Right.
But
different people.
there's different amounts in there. Depends on the contract.
The other question I had is
It's his contract.
the amount, so the total right here, the proposed is the
Stapled together.
2.245 million. Would that be offset by some of the unexpended funds from last year? And the audit, they should have all kinds of, the unreserved fund balance. So usually after they do the audit, that amount increases, and then you usually, in a town situation, you use that to buy down your tax rate. Would be the same analogy here, is that you would use that to, the 2.245 would be reduced by, just looking at the delta between the 17 budgeted and actual is about 125,000, so you could roughly reduce 2.245 million by 125,000, and that would be actually the budgets that would be going to the ballot and dispersed according to the formula.
correct, but we have a budget that we need to set for the SAU based on revenue that's established as part of that budget, so that can be included into the district budgets. Revenue for the districts may not be set until much later in the year, but we need that budget number. The revenue for SAU is the budget number that goes into the district budgets. So typically, we've budgeted 25,000, and to your point, on the question of are we able to cover what we owe or whatnot, we have that going to fund balance to help offset our other long-term liabilities.
Yes, Dr. Farr.
Mr. Cipriano, I'm looking at contracts here, all these contracts I'm looking at appear to be three-year contracts.
They may be.
When did we move to three-year contract cycles for SAU employees?
It's been varied.
They've had different terms over the years. They haven't been one-year contracts at the SAU level.
They've been varied. Kind of.
They've been
Depends.
varied, so they are 1, 2, or 3, but now we're moving to all three?
No, I mean, they're varied in terms of when they moved to a longer cycle. So it just depends on the employee. Like some employees haven't been here as long as others, so their contract cycle is different in terms of when
So
they
there-
move to a 3-year.
There's no standard, so somebody doesn't do a 1-year, a 1-year, a 3-year, a 3-year. I mean, that's would be typical. That doesn't happen. Who makes the decision?
It can. It can,
So-
but in this case, these are longer-term employees.
So you're making that decision for the board, correct? Because this board was not aware of these contracts, were they?
I'm not sure, well, yes, the board is aware of the contracts.
This is the first time I've seen these contracts.
All
3
those,
years contracts?
these-
all those people had three-year contracts prior to
Yeah.
those.
These-
All of them.
These were all on 3-year
Not
contracts?
mine, not mine. All the people that you have that you're responsible for, all those had
The
multi-year
four that we have.
contracts of 3 years, I believe. They got, Dr. Wilson's here, Nancy's here, Jeff's here.
Yeah, these were voted on by the board. The individuals in this packet are, under our policy, voted on by the board. They're hired by the board, not by me. I mean, I may sign them, but they're on behalf of the board.
That was discussed at a public
So
meeting.
that's what I'm asking. Was this voted on? Was this agreed to by the board, or was this just, because I didn't see it in the minutes, that's why I'm asking.
Yeah, all these people were hired by action of the board.
No, I'm asking for the contract extensions. Were these discussed at the last meeting to vote on?
No.
To
the
extend
No,
these
the contract
contracts?
extensions were not, because at the last meeting, hold on, I'll have to.
That's, I guess, what I'm asking, because I didn't see it in the minutes. That's why I'm trying to
Sorry.
figure out if it was a board vote.
Last meeting. Where was it? Actually, I think maybe it was at the meeting before. must have been was it at the meeting before that the board authorized me to sign contracts on behalf of the board. I believe it was, which is why you wouldn't see it in the most recent minutes.
The board gave me the authority to negotiate the contracts.
That's correct.
And they all had automatic renewals. They're just all on the same cycle now. They used to be off-cycle, like, they all ended at different times. They're all on the exact same cycle now.
That's correct.
So it was just cleaning up, it was just really cleaning up some paperwork.
So really, it never really came to the board, it just happened when they gave you the permission to sign the contracts? Is this, I'm just
Yeah,
trying to understand the
yeah.
process. So basically, it was never talked about publicly in a forum saying, these contracts are coming up, and they're gonna be negotiated by the superintendent, and just to let everybody know type of thing.
So, is that
Aren't we still in budget?
We are. We
Okay,
are.
I just wanted to make sure.
Well, I just want to clarify,
I'm just looking for a little clarification being
Oh,
made.
I completely understand, it's just, yeah.
Yeah. So, just as an example, use Mr. Dowd as an example. So the board, when we decided to hire Mr. Dowd, per policy, Dr. Metzler made the recommendation. The board approved the hiring and authorized Dr. Metzler to enter into contract negotiations and to hire Mr. Dowd. I signed on behalf of the board, but the contract negotiation, as authorized by the board, was done. And then I signed and executed the contract.
Okay, so it just never really got talked about board-wise, it just
Oh, yeah, we don't talk about all
automatically happens.
individual
just
things,
happens, though,
the
really,
benefits,
basically.
the how many
I can't
courses you
speak to
can
prior to
take, the-
2012, but these types of contracts existed
I'm
before I got here. Yeah, I
just
mean-
asking the question if.
No, I get it. I get it. Yeah.
That's all. Because I didn't have it in the minutes, that's all.
Dr. Farrar?
So when I look at the salary line here for the proposed budget, it reflects a 3% increase in the salary line, is that correct?
Correct.
Is there any, you're just basing that on a 3% across the board for all
Well-
salaries?
It's a pool of money that gets distributed after evaluations are done.
And is your salary and your potential salary increase and bonus included in this pool?
I believe so, but,
We have a merit pool.
yeah, the merit pool is what they call it.
So that's all included in here?
Correct.
And historically, the merit pool, it includes all of the SAU employees.
That's
So
right.
it gets distributed, there's administrators and then the non-administrators. The percentages have been higher for the people that were not administrators. When you're looking at, if you look at last year to this year, you're looking at the
Right,
salary.
in other words,
Distribution.
while the pool may be 3%, some may
Yes.
get more than 3%, and some may get less than 3%. Dr. Farrar?
But in your case, you got 3.25 plus 4%, so that's taking away from,
No, there's a bonus line there too, you'll see.
there's a
on-
bonus in this salary line?
Not in the merit pool, there's an actual line that's just the bonus line, right?
Separate, yeah.
Yes.
It's included.
Where- In
Budgeted.
here?
Correct. It's just part of the salary line, yeah.
Oh, it is?
Well, I
thought-
can't see, that's what I'm asking.
You're asking if that's in the,
Do we have a breakdown then of the salary line? Further breakdown? Because I don't see the separation here.
It's in there, yeah. I've incorporated it in there.
Well, yeah, you're just giving us one number. I think Kim's asking for,
Two.
if you took that
The
one and then
next
break
level.
it down to the next level,
down.
Yeah,
from the 7 code to the 13 code or whatever.
yeah.
Okay.
So we're gonna get that.
Yeah,
Yes, or?
yeah, I don't see why not. Anything else?
Yes, I
Mr.
wonder.
Boyle?
Chief Jeff, did you, on this, just this technology thing again, you said we went to a timekeeping system, so there must have been some kind of significant upfront cost, because I'm just looking, it was like an expenditure of $106,000. So our budget went from 125 up to 157, so I'm assuming it must have been some kind of a, you know, what the upfront cost was.
Correct, yes. We had a legacy system, which in reality did not cost an awful lot at all, and that system was completely out of support, basically. If anything happened to it, we were,
Right.
and not in a good way, let's just say. So that has been replaced by a more efficient timekeeping system. So we did have a higher cost associated with that. Similar to what we had with Infinite Visions, it's now hosted off-site, significantly reduces security risk as well. And if you look at the contracted services line, a portion of that previously had been budgeted in that line. I moved it up into technology services to consolidate into that one line.
To offset, yeah, okay. right.
Mrs. Sherman?
Yeah, I was going to ask the same question. I remember us talking about that legacy system had was gone. It was no longer going to be able to be supported, but we needed a timekeeping system for our staff and employees. And so you had anticipated that was going to be obviously a little more expensive than what we had, but when you add up the other contracted services that you pulled up over there, you've just kind of rearranged some of that data, so our increase is not as startling as it looks. It's hard to compare year over year when you move things over to, I believe they should be up in that,
Yeah.
IT line, but it's hard for us to compare. We see a big jump, and we
Well,
don't understand that big jump.
Well, exactly, and let's not forget that we budgeted that timekeeping system in this current budget year. So that there was some additional cost already mixed into the budget, and we have natural increases in our technology costs. And when I pulled it out of pulled some money out of contracted services and put it up into technology services, that contributed to an increase.
Okay. Any other questions? Seeing no other questions, we're going to move on to the next line item. Again, we'll have an opportunity to continue this discussion at further meetings. Next up, we have the superintendent's goals. Dr. Metzler to present his goals for the 2018-2019 school year.
Excellent. So, actually, Dr. Wilson, can you handle the Hempstead, or you want to? Okay, so we can go through these, just a background. Okay, so in the past, obviously, the school year starts in July, so some of the work has started. I also had indicated that I was waiting for Timberlane to approve their strategic plan, and you'll see that throughout my goals. Hopefully, you'll recognize that. I did ask all the board members. I apologize, Ms. Lowe's, you were not on the board yet. Attorney Savage, you may not have been asked either. I sent out, at one point and asked, hey, if you have anything that you want to see in my goals, or something you want me to consider for goals, please send me something. You may or may not have sent me anything. I did send the rough draft of these to 3 chairs. I did hear back on a couple of items, and so this is where we're at, rough draft. Certainly still willing to make any adjustments after I go through this, if there are things that you expected here that are not here, or things that are here that you don't necessarily think fit into goals. So quite an extensive list. At the pleasure of the chair, or the pleasure of the board, do you want me to read these to you?
So here's what I'm going to do here. First, I'm going to preface this with again, because we have some new members joining us this evening. Historically, what we have done as we discuss the goals is, as I discussed at the start of the meeting, Timberlane administers its district as it sees fit, just as Hampstead does. So even though there are goals in here, and Dr. Metzler splits them out for Timberlane and Hampstead, typically we'll defer, even though the total board will vote on and approve these. The Hampstead board will defer on the Timberlane goals. If you're happy with the goals, if you're satisfied, then I am, and vice versa, right? Because you understand your district and your district needs better than I do, and because I don't have any say in your district operations. That's for you to make decisions on, even though they're all presented here in a single consolidated view. So sometimes new members get a little confused by that. So I would just ask, focus on the goals as they relate to your district, Ms. Silva.
This is the first time that the Timberlane Board is seeing these goals. I don't know if it's even appropriate for our board to be having a discussion about what we think about these goals at the SAU meeting. I mean, is that what you'd like for us to do?
Yeah, so typically that's what we do, because this SAU board approves Dr. Metzler's goal as a board. Dr. Farr.
I agree with Mrs. Silva. I'm not in a position to make any motion or movement on these goals because I've not yet seen them, and I'm not going to go through them this evening. Well, I'm sitting here and try to figure out which goals I think are suitable and which may need adjustment without conferring with the rest of the board. So that's where I stand on these goals.
Fair enough. Okay, so I'll give people a couple of minutes to take a look.
Well, while you're looking, the 3 chairs that had a chance to see this, you'll notice there's been some changes since I think, when did I send them to you, Saturday or Sunday, or something over the weekend? I was working on them over the weekend, and Kathy Belcher. So we were literally even right up till late this afternoon, still working on the last section, I think, the business and budgeting. I was hoping I'd have consultant recommendations and things. I just don't have them yet, so we did the best we could under the circumstances. But they literally were finished late this afternoon.
Mr. Chairman?
Yep.
I tell the Timberlane Board that under facilities, section 3 there, I suggested C, that I wanted in the Timberlane section, something about capital improvement, technology plans, and strategic plan. I wanted that laid out, because that's going along with what, Timberlane Board feels. So I asked him to add those, and he did. I appreciate that, Dr. Metzler. Is it possible for us to amend goals after we get this, for instance, consultants' recommendations about budgeting and finance?
We certainly can work on whatever the direction is from either board, any one of the 3 boards for that matter. I think, the school board has school board goals, these are my goals, We moved to voting on them primarily because that's part of the evaluation and support process. If you vote for goals, I expect you'd help support achievement of the goals, right? I'm sure there was a time when they were information only, right? If you do a little bit of research and look on some other websites at the goals that superintendents have, they don't look like these. They're very short. You may get one line in 2 or 3 areas. We tried to provide some detail. It kind of pins down some of the work. It also makes collecting the evidence a little easier because we know what we're looking for. In fairness, it's going to sound, I knew what Dr. Farrow was going to say. I had an email all queued up to send them just to you, and then I was like, then I should be sending them to everybody, and they weren't done. So I was like, that may just make things more confusing. So I did not send that email to Dr. Farrow. And so here we are. So if it waits 2 weeks, that's fine. We're in October. We started in July. Some of these are pretty much no-brainers, and then some of them probably could use some kicking and punching if we're in a weird place.
Okay, Mr. Boyle?
Yeah, thank you, because what would be wrong with that if we have a meeting October 17th, a budget workshop session, so why wouldn't we adopt the goals at that meeting to give our board some time to look at it? We haven't.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that at all. If it's the will of the board to take a little more time and consider these, I don't have any problem with that at all, Mr. Boyle. Dr. Farrow?
Has the Hampstead Board seen the goals?
This is the first time that we as the board has seen the goals. I don't know if the chairs got this email or not, but just going over them right now, as far as I'm concerned, my perspective is they align very well with Hampstead Board goals, and it supports the goals that the board has set. So, from my perspective, I'm okay with these goals.
To answer your question directly, no, the rest of the board did not. I received them, and they were very well aligned with our board goals, and in keeping with what our administration is doing and everything. And I had a good sense that our board was going to feel that these were fine.
Yeah. So the answer to your question, it was almost on an agenda in Hampstead. I pulled them because they needed to come here first before they go to the, but that's a process that can be looked, if we want to go to the boards first and then here, it was like we were doing it twice and it didn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah. Well, I think alternatively, presenting them tonight, now they're in the hands of all the members, and if we want to take our time and revisit it at a subsequent meeting, I think that still accomplishes the goal of giving the members of the individual boards an opportunity to review. Ms. Silva?
This is my first time going through this process, but that does sound kind of backwards, that we would approve them here first, and then they would go out to the individual boards to look at and discuss. Almost feels like it should be the other way around, that the individual boards should be able to look and discuss, so then when it comes here, we've individually had our review of them, and then collectively would feel comfortable just approving them.
So I can,
Yeah.
I can only speak to just one thing that Ms. Ambrosisi brought up, actually, is historically, one of the things that we have done in Hampstead is that the Hampstead Board, to Kathleen's point, the Hampstead Board sets its board goals. And Dr. Metzler builds, at least in part, usually in large part, his goals off of the Hampstead Board's goals. And then our district administrators build their goals off of the board goals and Dr. Metzler's goals. And then you get down to the building principals and you start getting down, and they flow down. That way there's a consistency. So for us, we've always taken the position, like, let's get the board goals set. That way Dr. Metzler and Dr. Wilson have a clear understanding of the direction we want the district to go and the key areas that we want them to focus on. And then they align their goals predominantly with the goals that we had set, so. But again, not to put too fine a point on it, I'm fine with, we can delay this. We don't have to have a vote this evening, so.
Can I also just,
Hold on. We got a number of folks talking right now. I'm going to recognize Kathleen, and then I'll get to you, Karen, and then Sue.
we had made a point of making sure that our district board goals were completed by June, so that we could give time to our administration to formulate their goals and actually begin working on some of them, put some of the pieces together for that.
Okay.
I have a question. Is there some reason why Hampstead, if we're ready to vote on this, is there some reason these can't be voted on separately? But could we not vote on these and accept these tonight, and then Timberlane can do it at another, since they're not going to change on our side?
So I will tell you that for my preference is we vote on this as an SAU board, again, with deference to the individual districts and their ability to, to speak on the goals that are applicable to their district. The reason being is that Dr. Metzler is an SAU employee. Dr. Metzler's performance will be evaluated by this full board, at least in part, if not in large part, on the basis of these goals. So it's really important that the full board has a total understanding of the goals both from our district as well as yours, so that when we come back together in the spring and start discussing performance and things like that, or if need be other times, that there's that clear understanding. So my strong preference is that I'll delay it, we'll come back, we'll vote on this as a board, because that's really where it should sit. Mrs. Sherman.
So to defend my board, we worked all summer on our goals. And they weren't done in June. We worked really hard on them, so I'm going to defend us.
Oh, I wasn't putting in
And
any
we
details.
just approved our goals
Okay.
after a lot of work. And I would like deference that we be allowed to look these over, send any ideas to Dr. Metzler that individuals wish or we wish, and then come back on the 17th and have this on the agenda one more time.
Alex, you put that into a motion.
Mr. Doobie?
So, excuse my ignorance, because I'm new to the process. Why aren't the individual boards writing the goals? I've never, in the past, my employees don't write their goals. I write the goals for them based on what my strategic objectives are.
Educationally, educators write goals and then go over it with their higher up. And since we're the higher up, he's brought his goals based on what we think we'd like. There's been some back and forth. He saw our goals, he saw Hampstead's goals.
It's also a policy,
Which is
Oh,
always
that.
subject to change.
subject to change. But
Right,
here's the thing,
Dr.
so,
Metzler.
back to the point, there have been, comments in the past that I only work in Timberlane, I don't do any work in Hampstead. How can Hampstead evaluate the superintendent? We know that not to be true, right? Standing over a sinkhole in the pouring rain yesterday in Hampstead. So we work, and you've had access to Dr. Wilson. She does work with you. So we do work together. So it's about all 14 of you. I think to Ms. Silva's point, she asked, and I don't necessarily think it was answered, why is it done at the SAU first, and there is a policy. Back when, and none of you were on the board at the time, the evaluation used to be done in the fall of the superintendent, and then they'd set a salary. So you'd set a salary for next year based on the work of this year that wasn't done yet.
Right.
So that didn't make sense. So they changed the evaluation to the spring, right? And then we got into this whole goal-setting thing, and so, trying to get the goals. And then for a while, I went to the boards first, and then the SAU was like, no, you need to come to the SAU first, right? So I was like, okay, I'll come to the SAU first. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me doing this in October when I started to work in July. I don't disagree with you. I don't disagree. It is backwards. So if the policy changes or the direction change, we say, hey, get it straightened out at the boards first and then bring it here. But the board pretty much asked us to not, you didn't want to hear it twice. You didn't want them presented at your meeting and then here. So we stopped that. We just started presenting them here, and then that spoke to the policy.
Is it an SAU policy?
Yeah,
I believe so. Yeah.
So who looks at
I don't know, the letters, it's the superintendent presents his goals to the SAU in the fall or whatever.
the SAU? Do we have a policy committee for the SAU?
We do not.
We have an ad hoc when
Yeah.
we need something done, we've made policy committee.
So here's what I'm going to do. So there is no motion on the floor. It's just an agenda item that we've
Just
been
a
discussing.
discussion.
So I don't have any problem not calling for a motion and simply delaying this and adding it to a later agenda after the respective boards have an opportunity to review. Dr. Farah.
When we do get ready to vote, speaking of policies, I did look up the organization and operation of the SAU. I would like, and I guess I will have to call for our board to vote on this, I want to move towards weighted voting per RSA 194C:8 for this board moving forward. That would require our board to take a majority vote, so that could then be instituted here.
Okay.
So will that need to be done at our own board meeting and then sent to you as the chair?
I'm not sure. I have to look into that. I don't know the answer.
Okay, and then somebody will need to calculate the weighted vote. I've calculated it out, but I think somebody else should verify it.
Okay. Okay. Next up, we have the Health Trust Delegate. Dr. Metzer?
So typically, at this point in the year, we ask you to support Nancy Lewisal to serve as the delegate for SAU55 in the upcoming Health Trust Annual Meeting and Board Elections. So she would attend that meeting and cast a vote on behalf of SAU55. I believe we have one vote.
Okay, so the chair will entertain a motion to authorize Nancy Lewisal to serve as voting delegate for SAU 55 in the upcoming Health Trust Annual Meeting and Board Elections. Motion's been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Is there a discussion?
Can you just explain what that is?
Yep, so Nancy, you can probably explain it better than I can, but this is our insurer. This is,
Health Trust is our third-party insurer
right.
for Anthem.
Why don't you come up to the microphone, just,
Anthem Health Trust represents Anthem, and they're a third-party administrator for them. So I go to the board meeting, and they elect their board members at that meeting, and then they give us the advance notice of what the initiatives are for that coming year, and any information that we may need to prepare for the upcoming year.
okay.
Thank you. Okay?
Any further discussion? Seeing no further discussion, we'll move to a vote on the nomination of Nancy Lewisal for voting delegate for Health Trust Annual Meeting and Board Elections. All those in favor? Looks to be unanimous. Okay. Next, we have correspondence. I'll pass the folder around. We have a correspondence folder. We also have the administrator's report. Dr. Metzler.
We don't have anything this evening.
Okay. And in order to address one or two things, I am looking for a motion to go into non-public under RSA 91A:3, paragraph 2.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I believe that somebody from the public would actually like to speak to this board in a delegate session, and I think it would be a common courtesy to do that beforehand, and then we can go into non-public afterwards.
I'm sorry, we don't have public comments this evening, but I'll consider it for our next meeting.
I'd actually like to make a motion that moving forward, that this board actually has a delegate session, such that people from the public can address this board and air their grievances.
Fair enough. I'll accept that
Well,
motion.
give the praise.
I'll accept that motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Okay, seeing no discussion, all those members in favor? All those opposed? And any abstentions? Kathy, you got all that?
Thank you.
All right, so I'm looking for a motion to go into non-public session under RSA 91A:3, paragraph 2, part C and part L.
So moved.
Okay, is there a second? Second. Kathy, would you please poll the board?
Mrs. Abbruzzese.
Yes.
Mr. Boyle.
Yes.
Mr. Briano.
Yes.
Mr. Yuzi.
Yes.
Dr. Farah.
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes.
Yes.
Mrs. Hockaman.
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill.
Yes.
Mrs. Cornell.
Yes.
Mrs. Savage.
Yes.
Mrs. Sherman.
Yes.
Mrs. Silva.
Yes.
Mr. Dean.
Yes.
Mrs. DeSenza.
Yes.
I've seen this already, but I wasn't sure it applied to us.
Yeah, I have 8:02. Okay. We're going to go into
Before we
non-public.
go into non-public, though, we had non-public minutes from the last meeting. There was only the public session that we approved. So can we get that on the next agenda to approve it?
Yep.
The minutes?
Yeah, yeah, you
Non-public?
Yep, that's fine.
Thank you.
So, that goes up, right?